Well, it's Thanksgiving week, and it looks like we're going to have some big changes, a pattern change as we near Thanksgiving, and then that will last into the first week of December. I'll be talking about that and more in today's briefing. So let's get started. Okay, here we go. As far as weather risks, we're going to be watching the south central U.S. for some heavy rain that could produce some flooding. We're going to have some areas of heavy snow as well, mainly higher elevations and along the Great Lakes, the lee side of the Great Lakes. Now last week we had a pretty widespread rain over the central U.S. We're definitely seeing some drought improvement in Texas, parts of Texas, because we're having back-to-back weeks of heavy rain in that region. The western U.S. has had an atmospheric river last week. It brought a lot of rain, especially to southern California. Everywhere else was fairly quiet. What about snow last week? Well, snow was confined to the higher elevations of the west, a few spots in the upper Midwest, very scattered, and New England. Now, temperatures last week were quite mild in many areas. Yellows, oranges, and especially reds. Orange was anywhere from 10 degrees to 15 degrees above normal, and red was 15 to 20 degrees above normal. Matter of fact, these areas in brown here hit 70 degrees or warmer. Areas in red, 80 degrees or warmer. And if you look closely, you see these areas of purple, 90 degrees. Okay, so right now, if we look for some moisture in the air, you got to really go down to the Texas coast or to the southeast U.S., Atlanta, dew point mid-60s, Birmingham near 70. So feels like a fairly mild start to the day with dew points at that level. Everywhere else pretty quiet, low dew points. Okay, now quick look at some rivers here. I wanted to sort of show you this area hatched here. That's where tributaries and rivers, we could see some flooding. But as far as the main stem rivers here, there have been some bumps here, but overall we're still pretty low. Now, I've been sort of looking at December being the time of year when we start to get some improvement, and that's based on climatology. But I think I'm going to show you a case here that I think we are going to gradually start to break out of this low flow. And initially it's going to have to sort of saturate the soils, but evapotranspiration is low now, so more and more of that will be staying in the soils, and then it'll turn to runoff. So gradual process, but I think we're going to be starting that late November into December. Now I mentioned a pattern change, and we have a big pattern change here, shifting into an Alaska ridge. That's that orange. That means we have a ridge of high pressure in Alaska, and then downstream the jet stream buckles, and that brings a trough, and that brings colder weather. So what we have here, you're going to see this transition from the current jet stream to midweek where that ridge of high pressure builds, and once that builds, we have a dip in the jet stream to the east, and that's going to be a strong Arctic cold front and usher in much colder air. Now, let's look a little bit further, even next weekend, Thanksgiving weekend, and what we have here is we have a very intense high pressure in the Pacific up into Alaska, and the low pressure actually retrogrades a bit to the west, so that's going to pull that coldest air to the west. Okay, so let's look at temperatures, and then I'll look at precipitation. Here's temperatures. Well, what do you see here? Sort of just looking at it, you see some red for the next couple days, but then you see a lot of blue, and this intense lighter blue, purple, that's 10 to 20 degrees colder than normal. So a lot of cold air just overspreads the central and even the western U.S. the first week of December. Now, the other thing I want to point out, look at this abrupt line along the Ohio River. Much warmer air to the southeast, much colder air to the northwest. When you get that boundary here, whenever you get tight gradients, that's where we could get some action as far as the rain goes. But I did want to mention how cold it's going to be. Take a look at Thursday morning, Friday morning. We're looking at single-digit lows in the upper Midwest, highs only in the 20s. So it looks like really, even I'll show you the extended in just a minute. It looks like this northern Rockies, upper Midwest is going to be in a sustained period now of winter weather. Okay, so that was temperature. Let's talk about rain and snow. Here's our rain. Heaviest rain right in this band again, so we definitely are getting sort of going from drought to maybe flood in this region. We have some enhanced Pacific moisture in the Pacific Northwest, so Seattle looks pretty wet, and higher elevation snow. Speaking of the snow, this is where we can expect some snow, and maybe even once the cold air moves in, we could have some snow in the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes region. We're going to have that cold Arctic air flowing over the Great Lakes. And you know what that does on the lee side? That brings some heavy snow. So that's precipitation. I wanted to show you the extended here. A little bit interesting. Take a look at, maybe one of the questions is how long is this cold snap going to last? Well, this is weeks 3 and 4. So if we're looking at this upper Midwest here, even into the plains, northern plains, even the central plains, up into the northeast, look at that blue lingers weeks 3 and 4. So it could be now that we have a sustained period of below normal temperatures in this region for a while. Second thing to point out, look at the green here in week 2. This is right in the Ohio Valley. I think that's going to be the action spot, and that still will help those rivers pull back up from low flows. And finally, this is the outlooks that just came out. I'll put this out again later this week. This is for December, and this is for the winter months, December, January, and February, and blue being below normal. And here's our precipitation, maybe some snowy weather in these areas in green. That's this week's weather briefing. I hope you and your family have a great Thanksgiving, which is approaching soon. And you know, if you're traveling and you have some concerns about the weather, you can always send me an email. I'll help you out the best I can. Not changing the weather, but I'll give you some information on issues. You can reach me, john.bwoweather@gmail.com. Have a great Thanksgiving. Take care.